Welcome to CrossTalk. I'm Peter Lavelle. Game changer in Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood's decision to run a presidential candidate in the upcoming election has stunned many. It is a policy and strategy reversal that changes the political calculus in the country. Is the Muslim Brotherhood attempting to hijack the revolution or merely trying to preserve it? To crosstalk the Muslim Brotherhood strategy, I'm joined today by Alyssa Lappen in New York. She's a writer and U.S.-based investigative journalist and focusing on the Middle East and Islam. In London, we have Nabila Ramdani. She is a journalist and academic who specializes in the Middle East and North Africa. And in Tel Aviv, we go to Oren Kessler. He is Middle East affairs correspondent for the Jerusalem Post. All right, folks, this is CrossTalk. That means you can jump in anytime you want, and I very much encourage it. Nabila in London, if I can go to you first here, what do you make of the Muslim Brotherhood's decision to run a candidate? Only a week ago, 2 weeks ago, they emphatically denied that they were going to do it. Now they are. We see the movement slightly fractured. It's a big gamble, and if they win, they have all power.
Well, absolutely. It certainly is a dramatic shift from the Muslim Brotherhood's prior policy not to field a candidate in the presidential race, precisely because there were accusations directed at the Muslim Brotherhood for already wielding too much power, having effectively a monopoly on Egyptian state affairs following their overwhelming victory in the parliament, but also because they are also in charge overwhelmingly drafting Egypt's new constitution. And I think their decision before not to send a candidate for the presidential race was to try and assuage fears that they were seeking too much power. But certainly this decision now to send a candidate for the election is a dramatic U-turn, and it will have not only dramatic consequences for the internal politics of the party, the Muslim Brotherhood, but also for Egypt as a country, because of it's the largest country in the Middle East, and also because of its privileged geostrategic position, and dare I say will have also consequences on the direction that the Arab Spring is taking more generally.
You know, if I can go to New York, Alyssa, what do you think about this? Is this a big gamble on the part of the Brotherhood? Because Nabila has pointed it out here. I mean, you
actually,
know, go ahead, because a lot of people say it's a gamble and it really strikes at their credibility.
I don't think it's a gamble. I don't think it's a surprise at all, actually. I think that this has been a revolution in the planning stage for the last 83 years. And in fact, you know, they've never made a secret about the fact that they wanted complete control, and they wanted Sharia law, and they wanted Islamic law, and that's been in their foundational precepts since 1928. It's not really a surprise to me at all.
So you think?
I don't find
so
it.
Do you think that this
shockingly,
is? Do you think this?
U-turn or anything else?
Do you think they've been waiting for this for all this time, particularly since the fall of the Mubarak regime?
Exactly.
Okay? All right, we'll go back to that. Oren in Tel Aviv, what do you think about the political calculus of the Muslim Brotherhood?
You know, political actors anywhere in the world want to increase and maintain and retain their power, whether it's the Egyptian army or the Muslim Brotherhood or you name it. I don't know of any party in the world that doesn't want to hold power. In the case of the army, it would rather sort of reap the benefits of having its fingers in almost every economic pot in Egypt without, you know, having to take responsibility for the economy. But surely both the army and the Brotherhood want to maintain their interests, maintain power. Sure.
Nabila, what do you think about that? Because I mean, it's quite obvious the army doesn't, the military doesn't want to give up power because it controls mostly of the economy and their privileges, and you know, they have a very nice lifestyle. They've had it for a long time, and they have a very good friend in Washington as well. I mean, the status quo has always suited the military in Egypt since the fall of Mubarak.
Well, very much so. I would slightly disagree with Owen's assessment that the Muslim Brotherhood's decision to send a candidate in the end is shrewd. I would actually call it pragmatic. I think there's a simple reason behind the Muslim Brotherhood's decision, and that is to you know, take advantage of what is effectively a historical chance for them to actually wield power for the first time in the country's history. There have been all sorts of theories behind the reasons why they are sending strong candidate, including for cynics, I would say, that there is some secret pact between the Muslim Brotherhood and indeed the military in an attempt to maintain the status quo and indeed to engage in a power-sharing deal. I think, if a Muslim Brotherhood candidate is elected, he will have huge responsibilities to sort out the economy of the country. Let's not lose sight that it's the major problem that the country is facing. And because the Muslim Brotherhood will then be the only challenger for the military, the only party that will have to hold the military accountable and indeed put it in its place, that it will be a crucial test for the party in all sorts of fields, including politics, but also the economy and indeed the social problems of the country.
Alyssa, if I go back to you in New York, I mean, Muslim Brotherhood claims that they're actually a barrier to the Salafists, the more radical group, to come to power. They're going to be running also a candidate. I mean, so they're playing the middle ground, and they won the parliamentary election. I mean, they are genuinely popular among the electorate. Go ahead.
Well, that's true. They are very popular. I mean, Egypt is predominantly Muslim. I think there are about 10 or 12 million Copts, so that's about 10%, give or take, of the population, and the rest of the people, by and large, are Muslim. But Islam has been the predominant faith since the conquest of the area in the 8th century. And so it's really not a surprise at all that they're very popular. I mean, the area has been problematic for centuries. I mean, the economy has been poor. I mean, in fact, in the 18th century, Ismail invited Napoleon in to help out with the economy. So, in a way, this is like history repeating itself.
Well, okay, Oren, if I can go to
sorry,
you, I mean, the thing is that this is a democratic process in play, and I mean, I'll agree with you, Oren. I mean, if you can win, then why don't you go out and win? And it looks like the Brotherhood has a very good chance of doing that. Now, I agree with Nabila. I mean, then you're going to have an enormous amount of responsibility on your hands, okay, to fix the economy, to create jobs. I mean, in that way, it is a gamble.
It's true. It's true that it is a gamble on the part of the Brotherhood. I mean, Egypt's economy is in dire straits. There are, 40% of Egyptians live on less than $2 a day. There's 1.5 million babies are born in Egypt every year. Does the Brotherhood have answers to these problems? I don't think it does. On the other hand, if you or I are the Brotherhood and we've waited 8 decades to seize power, I don't think we would let that chance slip away.
Okay, Oren, I mean, okay, Nabila, seize power, I think, is going a bit strong here. We are talking about an election, aren't we?
Absolutely, and we should never lose sight of the fact that the Muslim Brotherhood has been fairly elected by the people to, in parliamentary elections, to run the affairs of the state. And I think the reason why the Muslim Brotherhood's candidate, Shatter, seems to have good chances to win the election is that because he is a multimillionaire, he's a financier who's got extremely good grasp on the economy, and traditionally Islamic parties tend to put the emphasis on charitable work, on philanthropy, and social justice is no substitute charity is no substitute for social justice, and this is precisely what Shatter is offering. He's offering a real economic and social program as an alternative. And since his party won the parliamentary elections, he has been able to meet with all sorts of influential people, including foreign officials, ambassadors, diplomats, and more crucially, representatives of international organizations, including the International Monetary Fund, and has been able to negotiate a generous loan for Egypt. And he also is very much seen in Egypt as the savior of the economy, as the engineer behind the Renaissance project involving 1,000 scientists and people from the business industry in general. And that's why, and I can't stress that enough, that the Muslim Brotherhood's major test will be to sort out the extreme dire economic situation in the country.
Alyssa, in New York, do you think they're up to the task?
Well, you know, it's a bit of a. I disagree completely with that they're up to the task, and I don't think that the primary goal is even economic. I mean, it's basically they want Islamic supremacism, and this has been the goal right from the get-go.
Well, I mean, it's interesting.
Now,
do you have a problem
with?
Do you have a problem with them doing that democratically through an election? I mean, if this is what the people vote for, then that's what people vote for. Go ahead.
I'll tell you what. I think that the problem really will be in how they deal with the Coptic minority, and what you've already seen is that the economic straits the country is in. There's no question about it. I mean, they're importing something like 80% of their wheat. And, you know, as Oren said, the prices are ridiculous, and they're living on $3 a day, and the bread is, they live on bread, and they're importing it all.
Okay,
so,
I'm going to jump in here. We'll continue our discussion on Egyptian politics. After our short break, we'll continue our discussion on Egypt's largest political party. Stay with our team.
There hasn't been anything yet on TV. It is to get the maximum political impact possible. The full source material is what helps keep journalism honest. We want to show people. We wanted to present something else.
I've had 10 execution dates, and believe me, just having 1 or 2 execution dates is enough for anybody to go through in one lifetime.
You know, more than 50% of the people who are executed in Texas are not white.
You know, living on death row is like, it's like hell.
We execute our convicted capital murderers. We have the highest execution rate in America. We're not afraid to do it. We do it well.
It comes a point when death becomes an avenue of hope.
I would get a letter, your dad is due to be executed next week. That is a very scary moment for you to know you can lose one of your parents within a matter of minutes.
And I'd say it's time to go. The guard would unlock it, and I would lead him into the death chamber. I would stay until after they were dead.
Welcome back to CrossTalk. I'm Peter Lavelle. To remind you, we're talking about the Muslim Brotherhood's participation in the presidential election. Okay, Nabila, we ended the first part of the program talking about the dire straits of the Egyptian economy. I mean, I think all of us would agree they need a big change there. The military's had their hands in the till for so very long, backed up by the Americans for so long. Give somebody else a chance. I mean, that's what it looks like they're asking people to do. And I think all of us, if you like them or not, would genuinely agree that they are popular in Egypt. So give them a shot.
Yes, very much so. And, you know, we shouldn't forget that we're talking about a Muslim majority country, so we shouldn't be too surprised to see that an Islamic party is doing well in that context. The Muslim Brotherhood has also been stigmatized, let's not forget, especially in the wake of America's so-called war on terror, which effectively pushed the Muslim Brotherhood underground, and it led to the party being banned, accepted unofficially in the political landscape, but nonetheless banned. And this is this was as a direct result between the cooperation between the dictatorship of Mubarak and the U.S. administration. I would
Peter, can I just jump
disagree
in there, if you don't
with
mind?
Ali.
Okay.
No.
All right, Oren, go first. Oren first.
I mean, you know,
we'll go to Oren first because he asked first. Go ahead, Oren.
Well, it's just simply untrue that the Brotherhood was pushed underground due to the U.S. war on terror. The Brotherhood has been underground for decades, going back to the era of Gamal Abdel Nasser. So, I mean, I'm not quite sure where Nabila is getting these facts.
Nabila, do you want to respond to that?
Especially so. Yes, absolutely. I'm saying especially so in America's war on terror, which largely contributed not just in Egypt but across the Muslim world to stigmatize Islamic parties, not just in Egypt but in Tunisia, in Morocco, and indeed across the region, and contributed to demonize this party and basically paint them as Islamic extremists. Now we know that the Muslim Brotherhood is seen as a moderate party, and contrary to what Alyssa was saying, it is also seen in Egypt as a bloc, in fact, to the more radical party, which is the Salafist party of Al-Nur, which is supported by Gulf countries, especially Saudi Arabia.
Okay, Alyssa, do you want to jump in there? You said you disagreed. Go ahead.
I don't really see a big difference between the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafist parties, but to get back to, I think Oren is absolutely right. I mean, the Brotherhood was banned initially in 1948 after an assassination attempt. And as you know, there were many brothers who fled Egypt and went to Saudi Arabia, they went to Kuwait, they went to Qatar and so on. So this is not a new thing at all, that they've been
Alyssa,
problematic.
would you say that the Muslim Brotherhood of 40, 50 years ago is the same as the Muslim Brotherhood today in Egypt? There's no change? They haven't evolved at all?
I think
Go ahead.
The founding principles are exactly the same. I mean, you know, we have Shatta is actually saying that he supports Al-Azhar and he wants Al-Azhar to be involved in the Islamization of the world. And Al-Azhar has a role in gaining control of Islamization in Egypt and of the world. And he said this just very recently. Okay. So that's not very different than what Hassan al-Banna said in 1928.
Since the beginning of the Arab Spring, we've seen Islamic parties wanting the democratic process to work for their people, okay, to have the same kind of lifestyles as the more rich countries in the world, and they want to do it through the ballot box. Why are they being so demonized? And that's why I asked the question. I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood has been actually quite quiet since the fall of Mubarak and only been getting involved in the political process like everybody else.
Well, you know, Nabila said that the Brotherhood is seen as moderate. I don't know who's the one doing the seeing here. I don't see them as moderate. You know, they may be moderate relative to the Salafis, but that's like, it's a terrible comparison. I mean, it's like I wouldn't want either if I were an Egyptian. It's
okay,
like
but Oren, do you have a problem with the Brotherhood is the only Islamic party in Egypt that recognizes and wants to preserve the peace treaty with Israel? That's pretty moderate, isn't it?
Well, even that, it depends what hour of the day you ask them. It depends who you ask, and it depends who's doing the asking. You know, just in January, I think it was, a Brotherhood spokesman told, it was a Sharq al-Awsat, the London-based Arabic paper, said there's no way we're going to recognize Israel, period. And then the next week, the Brotherhood deputy leader told a Western audience, oh, we'll respect all of our treaties. So really, they've spoken in two voices about this, and we'll have to just sort of wait and see what they do rather than rely on what they say.
Okay, Nabila, I saw you nodding, shaking your head. Go right ahead.
Yes. Yes, I agree. We have to see what they do, but in the meantime, we can also take into account their party. I mean, for example, they are very much inclusive of Christian Copts in Egypt. They're inclusive of women, unlike the Salafist party, An-Nur, for example, and it has the backing of the US administration. Hillary Clinton has shown support towards Shatter, because the Muslim Brotherhood also has pledged not to put to referendum the peace treaty with Israel. It has also banned demonstrations in front of the Israeli embassy because of Egyptians were protesting against Israel's treatment of the Palestinian people, for example. Now, of course, America will have to convince the Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia to accept the candidate who has already been accepted by other Gulf countries like Qatar, for example. So, of course, let's wait and see what the Muslim Brotherhood will achieve when it comes to power. But the positive news here is that if Shatter doesn't deliver, then I'm pretty confident that the Egyptians will take to the streets again and will democratically oust him.
Let's say, New York, what do you think about that? That's an interesting scenario and quite reasonable at that. Go ahead.
Look, I mean, I have to agree that with Oren. I don't think there's any good comparison between the Muslim Brotherhood and the more conservative Salafists. It's really like a piece of pie with one is the crust and the other one is the middle, and it's all of a piece. The thing is that the idea here is to make Egypt Islamic, and in fact, I mean, there are people who think that the Muslim Brotherhood actually wants chaos and wants to create chaos because that's what brings out more of a faith in Islam.
But why would they do it through the democratic process? Do they want to discredit the democratic process as well? This is part of their plan?
Because it's going to be one man, one vote, one time. I don't think that this is going to be a democracy. It's certainly not going to be a Western democracy.
Why should it be? Why should it be a Western democracy? It should be an Islamic democracy.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a Western democracy. I'm just saying it won't be. It's not going to be, and I don't think it's going to be democratic at all. In any sense of the word. It's not going to be the regular man participating. And as far as peace and justice for the minorities, that's ridiculous. I mean, people are burning churches. They're burning whole churches with people alive inside of them. And the army and the Muslim Brotherhood is just standing by.
Are the brothers doing that? Are they burning churches?
No.
Yes, they absolutely are. They absolutely are.
Okay, Nabila, go ahead.
And Qaradawi.
Go ahead, Nabila.
I think, one should bear in mind that the military has been quite instrumental in fueling sectarian divisions in Egypt, precisely because it doesn't want to let go of power, and it's reluctant to transfer power to a civilian government, let alone to an elected president. And we've seen throughout the revolution how the army was using sectarian divisions to pitch one community against the other.
Oren, what do you think? I'm not going to ask you to speak for the Israeli government. I'm asking you your opinion. But the Israelis have always preferred to deal with dictators like Mubarak. I mean, are they ready for a democratically elected president of Egypt?
But before I answer that question, I'd just like to address something Nabila said earlier.
Okay.
And Nabila, I hate to pick on you here, but I think you're being a bit too generous with your description of the Brotherhood as it relates to religious minorities. It's true there are one or two Copts on their party roster. The Copts I talk to in Egypt are every one of them, to a man and to a woman, are petrified of the Brotherhood coming to party. None of them are voting for the Brotherhood. So I think we should just be a little bit more wary of the Brotherhood and a bit less eager to sort of pounce on to accept every statement they make about religious tolerance.
Okay, well, it seems like everybody wants to pounce on the Brotherhood no matter what they say. Can you answer my question, Oren, as far as Israel is concerned and a democratic elected government of Egypt?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question? About dealing with dictators of the public?
Have been very comfortable in dealing with Arab dictators for decades now. Are they going to be able to deal with democratically elected leaders like we'll see in Egypt?
Look, I don't think Israelis have any, most Israelis anyway, again, I'm not a spokesperson, but I don't think most Israelis have any illusions that dealing with the Brotherhood is going to be particularly pleasant or easy or effective. But I mean, Israel is in a bind. If, Israel doesn't particularly like, having to deal with dictators as it sees it, but when there are popular elections, we saw it in the Palestinian territories, we saw it in Egypt, Islamists come to power. Now we've seen it in Tunisia, we've seen it in Morocco. It's a real catch-22.
Okay, Nabila, it's very strange. Muslims vote for Islamic parties. I can't get my head around why that's a problem. Go ahead, you get the last word.
Yes, I don't think it's a problem at all. I think, for a very long time, Western democracies have convinced the Arab world that either they have their relative stability and dictatorships, or they have
Nabila, I'm afraid I'm going to have to jump in here. We've run out of time, folks. Fascinating discussion. Many thanks to my guests today in New York, London, and in Tel Aviv, and thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time, and remember, CrossTalk rules.
Wow.